I'm a strong believer that sequels very rarely live up to their originals, but at the same time, I'm doing this for fun and because I enjoy giving just a few people some entertainment. If this doesn't get as widely praised as the other one, that's fine. I'm just happy to put a smile on people's faces. I was also thinking of adding something actually interesting as the background footage, but Minecraft gameplay is like a universal language, and I can't really think of anything that's just as easy yet still interesting. And as always, timestamps in the description for those of you who are curious about specific questions. In comparison to the last survey I created, 70 people took it, which is a little more than the last one. The gender of those that took it was heavily male. Fortunately, that is not what I'm here to test this time. Instead, I was curious about how your age affected your opinions on video games. For actual numbers, 71.4% of those that took it were male, 20% female, and as for the other genders, only one person for each. Luckily for those that don't identify as strictly male or female, you don't get excluded this time. Yay! I would really like to mention as well, this is done on the spot, this is not on my script. It is 9:50 AM and I have not slept, so sorry if my words sound really slurred, but I realise that I can't just sit around and procrastinate and not make this, because I have a commitment, and I will commit to it. As for all of your ages, there was a ton of 15 and 16-year-olds, with 15 being the most prominent. I think this sounds about right for the user base of r/teenagers, so no discrepancies here. I'm a minor bit disappointed with the lack of 17 plus, but at the same time I'm not really surprised. Now on to the statistics. To split you into two groups, 15 and under will be my younger generation, 16 and over will be my older generation. Personally, I would have made the split at 16 and 17, but there isn't enough data for that, so I've had to come to a compromise. Unlike last time, I actually ordered the questions in order of how interesting I thought the answers were going to be, so I'm just going to go them in question order. As for these boring first ones, I'm going to whiz through them. To start with, time on device. Most of us spend a lot of time on our devices, no big surprise there. I mean, you took this form, so if you're someone who spends no time on your phone at the very least, I doubt you would have seen this or taken the time to fill it in. As for time gaming, once again, no big surprises. Most people don't really spend a lot of their time on their device on games. I mean, there are other things to do, albeit obviously a few do still, but you can see that generally the amounts given lowered. But I would like to give some attention, however, to this absolute maniac that is able to play 3 to 4 hours a day whilst only spending 1 to 2 hours on a device. I have no idea what timeline ascending stuff he's on, but I'd like some of it. When it came down to whether you stuck to one game genre or if you expanded your horizons, I was trying to see if I could find like anything of substance in this question, but yeah, there's nothing. The thing I took from it is that the amount of people that stick with one genre and the amount that don't is surprisingly even split. I would have thought more people would try more variety, but I guess if you find something you enjoy, you don't really have a reason to stray from the path. When it came down to whether people thought indie games were better than AAA ones, I mean personally I'm a bit shocked about this one. Mainly just that I would have thought that a lot more people would say that indie games are better than AAA now. I mean, I'll say that in my opinion, the production quality of AAA games is still higher, but that's because you're comparing an entire corporation to a small team of 4 or even an individual developer. But from my personal experience, I've had tons more fun with indie games in recent years. As for what I took from this, very little again. It's a stretch and means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things, but I would say that the younger people were more radical in their opinions, showing a higher quantity of strongly agrees and disagrees, whereas the older generation were definitely more indifferent. AAA has fallen off. I'll say I'm not surprised again with this one. AAA has definitely fallen off. As someone else said, the industry has definitely started focusing more on quick cash grabs rather than actually putting time and effort in. They have their die-hard fans and they know there's no way to lose them, but occasionally a good game can still be found, just not as consistently as the past. Mobile games are not real games. Nothing really of note. Most people disagreed and that makes complete sense. There is actual gameplay, etc., so yeah, why aren't they games? At the same time, I can understand why people wouldn't consider them games, as they definitely do not have anywhere near the effort a lot of mainstream games contain, and seem more like time killers than actual fully laid out experiences. Similarly to mobile games, however, people pretty much agreed that visual novels are games. Now, this is a bit of a personal opinion. I have played a decent number of visual novels. Phoenix Wright and Necropara are some of my favourites, but in the least mean way possible, they are just kind of glorified books. Now, before you get your pitchforks out, I have a genuine second question. Why do people feel like they need the validation that it's a game? What is wrong with it not being counted as a game? It's kind of like the argument in the Geometry Dash community ages ago. Whilst I have my opinions and I'm not going to share them, Effectively, people had a massive war over whether Geometry Dash was a rhythm game or not, and I just think it's stupid. Who cares what you want to classify it as? If you enjoy it, that's all that matters. You don't need some pointless title. What does it prove? I don't know, that is what I think. Just because I think visual novels aren't games doesn't mean I think they're lesser. On to favourite games. Truth be told, I have very little to say about this category. It was more of a curiosity thing. So instead of taking any information from this, I will instead list the people I like because I am a biased surveyor. Anyway, first off, credit to the one person that said Tetris. I have mad respect for you. Furthermore, I respect the 3 of you that said Osu. I have wasted hours of my life playing that game. 3 people said Terraria. You lot are great people. 16 cases of Minecraft were spotted. No big surprise, to be honest, but it's still a game I play a lot. Now, I personally have not played the game much, but the person that put Battle for Polytopia down was quite a surprise. But for the short week I played that game, I had a ton of fun. 3 people put Hollow Knight. That was nice to see. There was 5 Stardew Valleys, which made me very happy because not that one, because Abigail, my beloved. And finally, to the one person that put Genshin Impact, respect. There's probably a few I missed, as there's a lot of games I love, but don't feel bad for enjoying what you do. We're all different people. Now, when it came down to the hardest games, I saw the most frequent answers consisting of either bullet hells, Dark Souls, puzzle games, and shooters. Bullet hells had 5 mentions, puzzles had 7 mentions, shooters had 8 mentions, and Dark Souls had 11 mentions. Now, as a massive fan of the Soul games, I am flattered. But also, I think it clearly shows that it's quite heavily engraved into a lot of our brains that the Souls games are some of the hardest games of all time. I mean, in my personal opinion, you probably haven't played them. Okay, I can't say that, that's mean. But jokes aside, I think Dark Souls 1, at the very least, is given a bit too much credit for being difficult. But after DS1, yeah, FromSoft really ramped the difficulty up. As for age distribution, the 16 plus tended towards Dark Souls, whereas the 15 minus tended towards shooters. My interpretation is just that a lot of people are scared to touch the Souls games because of their notoriety, but honestly I love them. If you haven't played them, give them a try. Now we should move on to the game areas and how they made us feel. Irithyll. Now for Irithyll, most of the votes tended in favour of either unease or relaxation, which are 2 polar opposites. At first, in my ever stupider wisdom, thought, clearly the people who are relaxed haven't played Dark Souls 3, but you lot gave some valid points. I can see how the fog, mist and colour palette can create a more threatening expression. Now, I love this area of this game, but as someone who got lost in it for about 2 hours, I would definitely say that my relaxation was slowly shifted to unease. Or you are this insane guy that just put easy area and refused to elaborate. This guy right here is the guy who can parry Pontiff every single time. If you're wondering why I haven't mentioned age much yet, by the way, it's because I care more about it with the final questions. These are just generic things I was curious about, and to pad the survey a little. Terraria. Now, I've spent way too long in the Crimson in Terraria, so I'm all but used to it now. However, unease being the clear winner was no big surprise here. What did make me happy, however, was seeing the abundance of nostalgia. I think Terraria is a game linked with a lot of people's childhoods, and I guess seeing even one of the creepy areas of the game, it was able to reawaken that childish joy we all once had. Breath of the Wild. Relaxation, happiness, no surprise at all. Breath of the Wild is probably one of the most beautiful games I've played, and I wish I could have spent longer in its world. To some degree, I didn't want it to end. Now, I don't know what insane people picked sad and uneasy. To some degree I can validate sad, but I'm curious as to what makes this landscape uneasy. All they said was that there was too much light. As someone who never leaves their room, I get that, but I wouldn't have thought it would make you uneasy. Either way, opinions are opinions. I won't judge, to an extent. Minecraft has people incredibly undecided. I think the actual thing that shocked me was that it spurred nostalgia evenly. On a surface level that sounds right, but when you think about it, the older people have practically grown up with the game. I would have thought that it would have triggered a sense of time passing more in them than the younger people. I guess the only mistake that could have caused that to not be the case is the fact that I used Lush Caves, a recent addition to the game. Maybe if I had used beta Minecraft it would have gotten a different result. Okay, actually reading some of what people said, I think it's clear that a lot of the older people just aren't really able to make themselves familiar with the way Minecraft is becoming. So I can understand why that would make them feel more uneasy than nostalgic. This is where we got onto the more important questions, and hopefully the ones I can introduce age into. I'm actually writing this, my script, as I view the results, so maybe I'll find out that age has no factor. Are games more boring? The amount of people that thought games had become more boring was perfectly split with the people who thought games were still fun. Now, at the beginning I did mention that I was making 16 plus the older generation, but I think this needs to be said. Out of the 17 plus people, whilst there was only 13, 10 of them said that games, at least to some degree, were becoming more boring. Only one person said no, and 2 that said maybe. As for everyone else, that being 13 to 16s, 14 said yes, 22 said no, and 15 said maybe. And that's fascinating to me, that 77% of the 17 years plus people thought that games were boring, whereas just under 25% of the 16s and unders thought games had become boring. This, to a degree, already proves my belief that yes, growing up does make your enjoyment of games fall, whether it's because of the games or yourself, we'll get onto that later. I guess it's easier for the older people to just be critical of how much it has changed. In some aspect it's similar to TV. We know what we watched as kids, and to us that was the peak of it. Seeing what releases now seems like garbage, but it's just a cycle. The people older and younger than us will think the exact same things about what they watch, and I think that's what may be occurring here. We see the state of the games now, even if they're good. It just doesn't live up to the expectation of what we once had. Whereas for the slightly younger people, maybe they just still feel like they're discovering, so for them, they don't have as much of an expectation. This is just my interpretation, feel free to make whatever one you want from the rest of the data. Getting online only to be tired. This one, unlike the previous, did not show similar results. The data mainly swayed towards either often or sometimes. Truthfully, I can't make an interpretation of that, but just give you some raw statistics. For sake of ease, no is representing rarely or never, maybe represents sometimes, and yes represents often or always. The 15 and unders had 14 yeses, 11 maybes, and 15 nos. The 16 and overs had 9 yeses, 10 maybes, and 11 nos. So overall, there was very little fluctuation in it. The ages were fairly perfectly split on this decently specific scenario. Are the games released less fun? To my surprise, majority said that the games released now aren't less fun. I would have thought different, but to be honest, when you see the you or the games question, it'll make more sense. Now, as much as I really appreciated the specific answers, if your typed answer didn't include an obvious yes or no, I had to expunge it, because I just can't do anything with it, I'm sorry. Yeah, this one won't add up to 70. For the 15s and under, 11 people said they are getting less fun, 12 said maybe, and 15 said that they weren't. As for the 16s and older, 11 said that they were getting less fun, 8 said maybe, and 9 said they weren't. Truthfully, there's nothing to talk about here, so I'm going to move on. Missing the past. This one, despite the ranges in ages spanning from around 6 years of life, 13-year-olds miss the past as much as some of the 17 to 19s. I'm not here to talk about why though for this, I'll just give you the numbers. When it came to never feeling this, 5 of you were in the younger gen and 4 in the older. When it came to rarely feeling it, 3 in the younger and 2 in the older. As for sometimes feeling it, 14 younger people and 10 older people. Having this feeling often was 9 younger people and 6 older ones, and always feeling this was 8 youngers and 5 olders. I mean, whilst you should keep in mind that the ratio of younger people to older ones is 4 to 3, it is very clear that the feeling of missing the past definitely is dependent on experience rather than age. I'm sure there are lots of 13-year-olds that used to have tons of friends, yet something like moving homes or losing the time to play games caused them to lose out. And at the same time, I'm sure there are a large amount of 17-year-olds that have had the same static friend group for years that they love and could never grow distant from. So when you look at it like that, it makes complete sense why age is no factor. Us missing the past is dependent on what we've gone through in our lives, not how games companies make their products. You or the games? This was a question I was very interested in, emphasis on the capitalization, and I think I saw what I expected. One thing that was brought to my attention is that I should have put a both option in this question. Now I can understand that a few people would feel that way, and truthfully I should have put that option there for them, but personally, I felt that in most people, one of the options should still have been more prominent. Like take me for example, I don't like any of the games released right now, but I still blame my lack of motivation to give them a proper chance as the main reason, rather than the fact that the game is bad. Whilst I think bad of the games, some of them might even be perfectly fine. I just find it tough to build the effort to play them for more than an hour. So how did this go? In the 15 minus, 22 blamed themselves for games being boring, 7 blamed the games, and 11 aren't tired of playing. Coming to the 16 plus, 17 of you blamed yourselves, 4 blamed the games, and 9 of you aren't tired of playing. The thing I'm curious about here, however, covers everyone. I think it is both A, weird that I was able to predict this would be the case, and B, weird that this is the case. If you think about it, when something is boring, you'd usually think of something that isn't meant to be enjoyable, like work or chores. You wouldn't think of games, so logically you'd think people would blame the games for not being fun, yet most of us don't, and even I knew most of us would not. In some sense, I could argue that it's the general rise of depression statistics in today's youth, but honestly, I don't know. I don't know why I thought this would be the case or why you will follow my hypothesis. I guess there's just some innate sense of self-hatred in almost everyone today, and I guess to some degree, seeing what the world is coming to as a whole, I can't really blame any of us. Advertising? Back to a less depressing one. Do you lot remember the recent Coca-Cola ad? No? This is what I was thinking about when I was talking about advertising. I realised I should have been more specific. Maybe people thought that I was talking about game ads or weren't thinking of these absolute cringe fests. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's only me that really felt like removing my brain after seeing this. Regardless, most of you didn't care, that's fine. As for those who did have an opinion, you were near 50-50 split. I'm not even going to go into detail on ages this time, it's the same thing again, evenly spread. Now, I'd argue from a business standpoint, appealing to gamers is a great idea, as even if your ad flops and is bullied, all publicity is good publicity. However, as a consumer, I wish they'd stop trying. It feels like a group of 60-year-olds pulling a whiteboard out in their meeting and going, "What do these kiddies nowadays like?" And one of them just like shouts out, "These darn electronic machines," and they all cheer for that one elderly person that just saved the company. I don't know, I'm coming up with this on the spot. But I will say, as our generation gets older, however, people more familiar with the gaming industry will start taking these roles and will actually know what they are doing. And when it reaches that point, I'll be able to bear it. Soundtracks. Now, I don't know how strict copyright is on smaller creators. I'm sure it's the same. But if they claim me and get my revenue, which is literally nothing, I couldn't care less. But if they threaten a strike, which I wouldn't know why they would care, then I'll probably just remove the audio track from the section. But I do want to play the songs from the games that I recognised. I'll try credit all of the tracks used. Before I get onto that, if I'm not lazy, you might be wondering what the music playing is in the background. Now, I have wanted an excuse to talk about this game for ages because I love it, but I have seen almost nothing about it. My time at Portia. This game had me hooked for hours on end. Now, before I state why I love it so much, let me talk about the two massive flaws of the game. A, the character design, or more specifically your character, is so ugly, and the voice choices are also just really dumb. And B, anyone who has played Stardew Valley knows that in the late game, all you need is just tons and tons of starfruit wine to get the money to afford anything. Well, imagine having to get tons of starfruit wine, but it was required for the main storyline. I hate carbon steel bars. Why are they in everything? Now, as for the positives, it's basically Stardew Valley but 3D. It has a main storyline too, but also a decent bunch of side quests and commissions, so it's a little less free roam than Stardew. The one thing I'd argue it does have on the same level of Stardew is the music. I think the winter tracks are some of my favourites, and listening to them makes me wish it snowed in the UK more. And the one thing it did better, relationships. Stardew is incredibly lacking in an actual relationship system. You talk once a day and give them 3 gifts a week. This serves its purpose, but in Portia it goes into a lot more detail. You can get perks and benefits from befriending or dating people, and there are so many more activities you can do with them. You can spend a lot of the time playing the game, not even doing any of the story, because it's not forced on you. It's only used for progression when you want it. You could just spend your whole life completing commissions and not doing anything important for the town. I love the game so much, and it's on Game Pass if you have that, so if you do, please give it a go. The art style is very kiddie and ugly, but if you can look past graphics, which I know a lot of people have a tough time doing, it can be an absolute blast. But enough about that, onto your choices. Minecraft, no big surprise. It has its banging tracks like Pig Step, but also its really peaceful and original tracks that we will always love, like Subwoofer Lullaby, etc. It's sad to see C418 gone because Microsoft, But at the same time, I think it's definitely better that Microsoft owns the game than Notch. Undertale is another no-brainer. I mean, I'm sick of Megalovania, but I can't argue that it's not a good song. And even the non-boss songs from Undertale are just fantastic. And just like Undertale, I also have to mention Deltarune. The World Revolving and Big Shot are just such good tracks, but I even love just Rude Buster, and especially the Camellia remix. Ace Attorney, yeah, Cornered perfectly encapsulated that feeling of catching the mistake in their testimony. I could not ask for a greater song for those moments. And whilst I want to show a clip of the Von Karma trial, because that is probably one of the greatest sequences of all time, I will do the courtesy of not spoiling it and just play the track. But those of you that know, you understand how hard that trial went. Now, I really want to keep going through soundtracks. I could spend a whole video on them just talking about them. I haven't even scratched the surface on some of the really niche ones. So don't take this as my opinion of the best. These just happen to be the first ones that I saw. Crying? I'm not gonna lie, I don't want to analyze this one. When I saw the Google sheet, it's very clear it doesn't want to make it easy for me. So going purely off what the Google Forms data said, basically most of us have human emotions. Moving on. Now, before I get to the final question, I would like to highlight this one mega detailed answer to the soundtrack question. This is probably what the soundtrack section would have been like if this was an opinion-based survey, but no, this is about you lot. But I will say this person's answer alone made my entire Google Sheets document have a gaping hole in it, and almost made me miss some of the information multiple times. Oh, and also, you can't have the good without the bad, or in this case the funny. If you manage to star in this shortlist, then pat yourself on the head and call yourself good boy, or whatever you identify as, because you don't deserve it at all. I hate you. Okay, in the question where I asked you for your Discord, you already had a few funny answers. The fact is, you didn't even have to fill it in. It was an optional question. You could leave it blank. We had one person leave their Discord, only to ask not to be contacted. We had someone who was too lazy to type it out. And now, this is genuine concern though. If you're either of these two people and happen to see this, please let me know. Like, if you had a Reddit, you should have just left that, just in case. I only said Discord because it's the easiest one for me, as Reddit's user searching engine can be incredibly temperamental. The hardest game had 3 answers that I liked. We had someone apologise for having no answer. I respect the politeness, but it's an online form. You'll be alright. Another person said Hearts of Iron 4, which was only funny to me because all I could think of was the Hearts of Iron players micromanaging an entire country's army but can't even manage talking to a woman meme. And then we just had this one. Yeah, I completely understand. I've seen what people are like online. I don't have any answers to highlight for this one, but a lot of people had a different opinion on Irithyll purely because it was Dark Souls. The Great Plateau was able to arouse someone, and whilst I cannot tell if this is a joke or if they stand by this, I do really like the answer of Microsoft is ruining Minecraft something something Ship of Theseus. I had to search up what Ship of Theseus meant and it hurt my brain. For those of you who don't know, if you take a ship, and we call it Theseus's ship, if you replace all the parts of the ship, like the planks and the mast, is it still Theseus's ship? Now, I get that they are effectively trying to say that Microsoft is replacing Minecraft things to the point where you ask, is this Minecraft anymore? But yeah, I found this answer ironically funny in some shape or form. Anyway, I think it's time we go on to the final category. Do you wish you could go back for the first time again? I'm not even going to analyse this one, I'll simply put it on screen. I think the thing to take from this is that we all likely have that one game that meant so much to us. Whether it be the soundtrack, the gameplay, or just the storytelling. Maybe not even that, maybe it's just the people you spent it with. Either way, most of us have a game or multiple games that are close to our hearts, so close that we'd give up anything just to play them again for the first time. As always, thank you to the 70 of you that took this survey. I really appreciate it, and for obvious reasons, I could not have done this without any of you. And thank you to anybody who didn't take this, that is still watching this. I put a considerable amount of time and effort into this one, and the final word count is bordering on 5,000. The one thing I would take from all of this, if you ever feel bored of video games in this ever-expanding online scape, at least you can be confident that you're not alone.